Two guys, one bench.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Two Guys, One Bench, where we're 650 pounds of shit talking on a 30-pound bench.
And we talk more shit than assholes with private IG accounts.
Hell yeah. All right, let's get this party started right. As per usual, we got our Asylum Ward smelling salts canister. I just loaded it up with some new shit. I'm ready to blow my nose off of my face. Gonna hold her down here a bit more. Oh, you know? Oh, Jesus.
It's been a bit
Careful, don't get too close.
It's been a rough day.
That's a new one.
Bigger one.
Fuck. Yeah, that's a new one. I forgot to tell Darrell. We had a little bit watered down last week, but not this week. So go get yourself some Ward smelling salts. In my opinion, best smelling salts out there. Also, they're on a mission to reduce the amount of plastic waste on the earth. So get this lifetime warranty on a bottle and just fill it up with refill packs that pack less damage to the environment.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
All right, so as per usual, we're going to get on to our shit talking section. That's for sure. That's our favorite part, so why not kick that off first?
So, what I want to talk about, my rant of the week, I guess, is how your federation in no way accounts for your trajectory of where you're going to be as a lifter and means nothing in the grand scheme of things. What I'm saying by that, I'm not just saying you should always stay in the same federation or one is better than the other. What I'm saying is that too many people are stuck in this cycle of thinking that there's certain federations that are better than the other, blah, 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 based solely off a name. You're not going to be, sorry to talk shit when you're crying.
The real deal.
Your trajectory as a lifter is not determined by what federation you're in. What I mean by that is if I'm competing in the IPF, but I'm a dog shit lifter, I'm not just going to turn into an elite level lifter compared to someone who's in a random local federation and is elite level. Just because you're lifting with elite level people around you doesn't mean you're elite. It's not like basketball or any other sports where you're going to play up to your competition just because you're around them. Just being around better people, it will help you sometimes, but that's the one day out of a 12-week prep maybe that you'll ever be around those people. So really, you're going to make the difference in yourself, not the federation. And I see a lot of people, specifically in the CPU, APU around here, that they like to stick out their chest saying, oh, I'm a CPU lifter, I'm an APU lifter, like it means something. Well, you're also a dog shit lifter because your numbers aren't elite. And I'm not talking from experience of being a 540 Wilks lifter, but I'm not going to walk around with my chest held high saying I'm something when I'm not, because at the end of the day, there's no point bragging about the federation you're in because the federation isn't the thing putting the weight on the bar.
Yeah, 100%. And then also, you know, at the end of the day, it's who you train with at your gym. And we kind of have a cool kind of environment where we're lifting with guys that are in all natural comps. We're lifting people untested. And we do see freaks out there, and that just drives me to push harder. So obviously, I just think it's having that environment is important, more important than, you know, what other bullshit you consider, right?
Yeah, after seeing the meet that happened on the weekend here in Calgary, I just see it just brought to home a couple things that people like to be put out there. Oh, I'm competing in CPU. It's like, cool. Your total is a novice total, and you've been doing this for years. So maybe you shouldn't worry about the meets you're doing and worry about the shit you're doing in the gym instead.
My rant of the week is kind of on par with last week when I was talking about dudes, their dick and balls hanging out. Well, next step on my radar for my rants is motherfuckers in the gym who smell like absolute feces and BO. You know who you are. Well, actually, you don't, because most motherfuckers that smell like shit don't know they do. Or maybe they have a broken nose, or their nose doesn't work, or whatever. They just don't give a fuck. But I am sick of guys just crop dusting me with their rancid, not farts, but just body odor. And it's 100% unnecessary, and I don't think, it should be allowed. Previous gyms I've worked at, I've actually gone up to guys and said, listen, you're disgusting. I'd spray them down with Axe body spray, give them the Italian shower. Still couldn't help most guys. So it's definitely something you should always consider when you're going to the gym. Number one, take a shower maybe at least once a day. Number two, put on some deodorant, go old school, get some Old Spice or whatever works, right? Just put it on, I don't care. And then also brush your damn teeth or put in some gum, because I've spotted so many guys on bench press and gotten a disgusting
That whiff.
of just meat infested, rotten teeth, coupled with Gyno. just disgusting breath spraying at me, and coupled with spit. So let's be hygienic in the gym. Obviously now, with all the COVID pandemic stuff going on, you want to be extra cautious, right? All right, so moving on to our strength sports section. There was some exciting stuff on the weekend, finally, in terms of powerlifting. Darrell?
Yeah, down in the States, I'm not sure exactly where it was held, but there was the Showdown meet. So a lot of big name lifters off Instagram. I'm sure most of you saw it or saw highlights of it. So we just kind of wanted to touch base on a couple things on there.
Yeah.
Just some of the highlight lifts we saw. Something that stuck out is Joe Sullivan's all-time world record squat at I believe 219 body weight in the 220 weight class, hitting an 822 squat.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And that's absolutely ridiculous, because what people don't realize, regardless if you're tested, untested, reps or no reps, 822 is a massive amount of weight. It doesn't matter who you are, how you got to it. It is extremely, extremely heavy. As someone who's deadlifted over 800, I can't imagine putting it on my back and hitting it as cleanly as Joe did on the weekend. So props to him for that.
Yeah, and plus, isn't he like 60 years old?
Yeah, well, he is a younger guy. He just looks a little older. I think he's about 26, 27.
Yeah,
so
every bit of 40 plus,
but he's definitely been in the game a long time, and it just goes to show that you can still hit PRs even when you've been doing this for over a decade, and that regardless age or how long you've been doing it, saying if you've gone years without hitting a PR, you need to switch up your programming, because Joe's proof that you can still hit big ass PRs at whatever age, whatever body weight, doesn't really matter. You just got to put your mind to it.
hell yeah.
Another lift I was excited to see was Hunter Henderson. So to me, I believe she's the best female lifter in the world. The Wilks won't say that, but that's because Wilks is a flawed formula, but that's for another time. She competed in the 164 or 165 weight class, I believe it was, and started off with a bang, hitting an all-time world record squat of 534, which is unbelievable because, yes, I'm talking about a 164-pound girl squatting something that a lot of guys at local meets are going to be struggling with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, I can tell you from experience, my first meet, I was nowhere near that. Not a natural squatter, so that was absolutely massive. Unfortunately, she didn't win at all. She came second, which is still great, but she had a hell of a meet.
Cool. One guy that stood out for me the most was this guy who's like, he's like a superhero type looking dude, John Hack. And he destroyed it in that in that meet 100%. I did see that his squat, he hit his first attempt, and then I think it was actually good on the second one.
I've seen multiple angles of the second squat at 705, and it was way deeper than his first attempt.
Yeah.
So it just comes back to what we talked about briefly before about having some consistency in these judges and reffing. How can you pass his opener and then when he clearly hits more depth in the second lift, red light him for that?
Yeah. Then of course on the third, what's he got to do? He's got to bury it, and then more than the depth that he was going to, which passed in the first attempt. And then boom, he couldn't bang it out of the hole. He failed, so he's stuck with just the first attempt in the squat. But he made it back with some huge benching. I can't believe.
Which is nuts because no one makes up for squatting with their bench.
No. And how much does this guy weigh?
He 198.
Okay, and he's benching 562 pounds right now, which is completely insane because there was a super heavyweight there that just benched maybe 20 pounds more than that, Dan Bell.
Yeah, and
He was an insane squatter. I think he was close to 1,000, and then his dead was mid 800s.
yeah, but this is a guy who's also at least 150 pounds heavier.
Wow. Give us fat guys a break.
Yeah, but big thing for John Hack this meet, like Russ said, he had to make it up on his bench, and he definitely did because he was going for a all-time world record total, and he managed to do that. On his second attempt, I forget where he was. I think it was around 360 kilo, so right under that 800 mark. And then for his third, just said, fuck it, and threw on what he needed to secure the all-time world record, and he smashed a 848-pound deadlift, 385 kilo, sorry, for people out there. And
That's
it's just
insane,
ridiculous.
So one thing I saw that was pretty awesome and makes more sense to me was I believe none of the lifters had to wear a mask.
Yeah.
None of them were wearing a mask, but everybody around them was wearing a mask, which makes 100% sense. When you have your lifters having to wear masks, I mean, this is ridiculous. It's like you would ask NBA players, NFL players who already, in NFL, they already have a helmet on, have to wear a mouth guard, put on a mask so they can barely breathe. No. And if any of you have ever been under a bar, especially on a squat, even a dead, all those lifts, you can barely breathe when you unrack that thing. And what's most important when you're lifting is your breath. When you get that big breath in, then you can pop it down nice and low, say in a squat, and blast it up. So you need that air, and it's just ridiculous that lifters have to wear a mask. So props to that meet and their reasoning for not having their lifters wear a mask.
Yeah, I think they're headed in the right direction. It's good to see some federation abide by that and just think about their lifter, because it's ridiculous to say of some of these federations that they're enforcing this rule when they're worried about the lifter safety. Well, what's more safe? Me attempting a max squat with limited air, and I know people are going to come at me and say, oh, well, the mask doesn't stop air consumption. Well, if I'm uncomfortable in any way trying to take a huge deep breath while I'm trying to brace and could possibly pass out or collapse with this weight, I think that's a little more dangerous than everyone around me who's also taking care, and you got the judges backed up extra far so that there's no possible way I'm infecting anyone around me.
Yeah, and also like myself personally, I have like seasonal allergies which cause me asthma, and I have asthma attacks. So if you put a mask on, that's like blocking air even more. It's basically a panic attack that you're having, and to be able to lift in that environment, that's why I wouldn't bother. That's why I'm not signing up for meets, because it's asinine and it makes no sense to me. So yeah, moving along, we're going on to our Eddie and Thor update. So not too much again. Understandably, Thor looks like he just had a baby son. His son was born. So obviously that should consume his life right now in the next week or so. So congrats to him and his wife. Mini Mountain. And it's always exciting to see if, the kids of these giants grow up to be around the same. I have been watching a little bit of Eddie's footage on his Instagram, and it showed him doing some bag work and some boxing stuff. And I'm going to have to say, dude, it's not about hitting bags anymore. Get in there and start sparring. And your technique is so forced, and it makes me wonder what's really going to happen in this fight, because it sounds to me like he's a yes man type of guy, similar to what I heard back in the day, where Brock Lesnar, aka Cock Chestnut, can't take anything away from him. He was a UFC champ, but he got a little punch shy after a few beatdowns, aka also from like Cain Velasquez,
Shane Carwin.
He won that fight, but once you get nailed by these heavyweights, you don't want to get hit that much more. And I remember Pat Barry saying he got pulled in to help with striking, and it seemed like he was just there to hold pads and do positional stuff, but never spar. And so, yeah, in my opinion, it's the number one thing you should be doing at the end of every practice, and that's what I do with my fighters who are amateur fighters. And if they're doing it, then of course these guys should be doing it as well.
So this past weekend, big UFC event, and we all wanted to see UFC 253. Had a lot of interesting fights on the card. Obviously, main event, Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya, but the whole card was pretty entertaining all around. Like for the main card, give a big shout out to the hometown kid here, Hakeem, who he did what people don't realize. Yes, he did win his fight. It was by decision. He fought someone out of Khabib's camp, Zubara. I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but the biggest takeaway from that for me was the fact that Hakeem stayed aggressive, and his opponent didn't make weight by 5 pounds. And I know that seems like, oh, it's not a big deal, 5 pounds. What's 5 pounds? If you're off by 5 pounds, it's not like this person didn't try and cut. It means they were so damn big they couldn't cut an extra 5. So you're going into that a heavy underdog because of just size. And the person, honestly, it's legal cheating, because if you go back and look at most people who miss weight, they end up winning their fight because they didn't put their body through that same level of dehydration and training, and they didn't drop it all that water weight, and they're probably feeling a lot better going into it. So to see him go in there and walk the man down and call him out in the 3rd round for running, I personally was a big fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he just played the game the right way. He didn't go into the wrestling. He kept his distance. He got taken down, but he got back up, and there was no progression with the takedown.
Yeah, he was stuffing him great.
And so that was a pretty awesome performance. And, next up could be a top 10 guy. And kudos to my buddy, Declan Walsh, who owns Fight to Be Fit. He took care of Hakeem's nutrition for the entire camp, I believe, and of course the weight cut. And Hakeem made the weight easily. So obviously there's a science to it. And if you are having a struggle with weight in everyday life, or if you want to cut down for a fight or an event, any sporting event, reach out to him. He's in Canada. He's in Calgary, Alberta. He's local. So I used to work with him, and we're good buddies. And so, yeah, that was a great opener for the card. I want to say shout out to UFC Fight Pass for being motherfuckers and having me order the card, get it going, and then locking me out for the first 2 fights, which one of them was, me and Hakeem's fight. Luckily, I'm a little skilled at the internets, and I won't tell you where I found it, but I found a screen.
I want to pull a Brendan Schwab.
I want to pull a bend-in snob and tell everybody where you get the streamers, but if you're smart enough, you can find them. But I was fully willing to pay for the fight, and I did. And finally, I got to get it working about halfway through the main card. So, yeah, watch out for that with the Fight Pass. It's a little quirky right now. And shout out to the UFC for dropping the ball on that. But there were some other exciting fights. The next one, obviously, that stuck out was not the boring ladies fight. I'm sorry, that sucked.
It's not because they're women. It's because it sucked.
It was a terrible fight.
When neither person has knockout potential or the ability to finish a fight standing, it gets very boring to watch. I'm sorry.
We've seen some crazy all-out wars that contest maybe a lot of the men's fight because a lot of these women are vicious and they go for it. But that was a bad one. So the next most exciting fight up until the main card for me was Dominic Reyes and
Jan Błachowicz.
Błachowicz. You might not have that right, but he's a Polish assassin, and he's been in the game for a while. And
37 years old.
37 years old. So yeah, I like that. Old balls for the win. And myself, I've never really been a huge fan of Reyes, especially coming into that John Jones fight. He's talking all this smack, talking a big game. He did put on a performance, but he didn't. He took the foot off the gas last round, and he didn't win, and he thinks he's the champ. So then he comes into this fight thinking, oh, this belt's mine.
To me, what I took away from it after the John Jones fight, yes, you lost. Some people think you won. But as soon as that fight's over, nothing can be done about it. Move on with it. And like I told friends before this, I said, what's going to happen is the same thing that happened with Alexander Gustafsson when he fought John Jones. A lot of people thought it was close. Some people think Gus won. But after that, he was in that mindset of I was robbed, instead of thinking, okay, what do I need to do to get back to that fight with John, and how can I get better? Gus goes on a losing streak after that, gets pretty sure knocked out by Rumble Johnson in his next fight. Yeah. But Dominic Reyes comes in talking the same shit about how he's never, I'm too athletic for him, he can't hit me, blah, 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 all these things that Jan's supposedly never seen, but Jan walks him down and knocks him out cold, and meanwhile you look like an asshole because you've been running your mouth for months.
Yeah, I mean, and I knew right away Jan was, I know he's a killer and I know what he's capable of. And he knocks out guys with nice combos, and he had some good combos going into that one. Shit ton of power. Once again, the left hook is what caught Reyes. So when you're starting to learn MMA or boxing, start thinking about that left hook. If you're an orthodox fighter, that's generally the lights out switch. So
one of the bigger news points for the weekend wasn't so much Costa and Izzy. It was Izzy's right giant titty.
Big old titty.
And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about the giant case of Gyno that Izzy was rocking for weigh-ins and at the fight.
No, he's always had that drill. Yeah. I saw a year ago.
No, he's never had it.
We looked that up. We looked at his titties from a year ago. And he's got normal titties. And now he's got a big old fucking man boob on the right side. And everybody's talking about it except for Izzy, who was calling out Paulo Costa as being a steroid monkey.
And if you're going to call someone out, I find it pretty funny. A lot of the times, people that point the fingers are usually guilty as shit themselves. If you're going to call someone out, maybe don't have a glaring example of what potential, I'll just say potential, PD use could do to you. And for people who don't know what it is, when we're referring to gyno, it's pretty much a development of breast tissue from someone who's on, let's just say, testosterone and isn't taking their estrogen blocker. It is very common in men because guys have breast tissue or glands because, well, that's how we all start off. But during puberty, it's pretty common for guys to get it, be little small little things. It's not something that's always associated with weight gain, so it's not like, oh, he was just fat on his right side.
And that's usually when your balls are dropping and your test levels are at their ultimate highest.
Yeah.
But not when you're 30 plus years old and mysteriously fighting a guy who you know is very strong and you need some more strength. And oh wait, oh, it's the lockdown pandemic, and there's really nobody that's going to come check you.
Yeah, no one can come in your house and check you. So
Coincidentally, that's
weird.
a lot going on in powerlifting, in my opinion, as well. Everybody's banking on these times to like do a huge cycle to build their total up, and then knowing that no one's going to come test them. Right? Someone comes to your door to start coughing.
We've never seen that before.
No. But anyways, word up to Izzy's Tiitty for showing up for the performance of the night. Won a $50,000 bonus for that Tiitty. And who knows, maybe it's just something, a rare occurrence, but definitely get that thing checked out.
This fight it depends what side of the fight you're on. If you're an Izzy fan, so there's 3 of you in the world, you probably enjoyed it. The reason I say that, let's be real, he's extremely talented, but he just comes off like a dick. And it's not like a Colby Covington where you kind of like get in on the joke. He's clearly just being a dick just to be a dick.
Yeah, he's an asshole in and outside the ring, in my opinion.
And his performance in a lot of his fights hasn't backed it up. He has 2 good knockouts, but he has a lot of iffy decisions. He couldn't put away an old Anderson Silva that everyone else has managed to do it to.
Yeah, and by the way, Anderson Silva, although he was very cocky in the ring and he did a lot of those antics outside of the octagon, he was always a gentleman, maybe because he couldn't speak English that well. It's normal. He'd always say, it's normal. But he always had that high-pitched voice, and he was very, he was very kind, and he's a gentleman and a sportsman. But even Izzy gets out and he starts, talking shit, but it's not even really that funny.
It's like, dude, you're 32, quit acting 12.
Yeah,
but
who would look at anime at 30 years old and play Pokemon games? Not you.
Yeah. So, but back to the fight, he was impressive. He did something a lot of people, just in the casual fans, didn't expect to see. Everyone expected to see Costa do what he normally does, walk forward like the Terminator and throw hands, throw combinations, mix it up, and take the fight to Israel. When you have that much bad blood in a fight, you usually see 2 people clash. You don't see one person stand in the middle, taunt, and then not throw shit and get leg kicked to death.
No, yeah, it's almost like he blew his energy getting ready for the fight and talking shit, and then when shit came to shove, and push came to shove, he got hit by the headlights. Bright lights of the UFC, and couldn't handle, even though there was no fans in the crowd. But still, when you got a champ standing across from you and you've been fucking running your mouth a lot, you better be able to back it up.
You can't taunt when you're down 1-0 in the rounds,
No.
And then figure, hey, I'm going to do the exact same thing in round 2, and eventually he's going to fall for this and come at me, because it didn't. And when he did come at Costa, he put him to sleep. So it was a great fight by Izzy. He did everything he needed to do.
Another thing, at the end, when he's on the ground and the fight's been called over, Stylebender decides to dry hump his ass. That's not I don't know if you caught that, but
yeah.
I'm not a fan of that.
Just expect unclassy shit from him at the end of the day, because that's pretty much who he is. The reason people doubt him, I don't think people so much doubt the technique or skill. They just hate watching him fight and want to see him get knocked out because he's a dick.
Yeah, it's kind of the Mayweather effect.
Everyone knows he's good, but when you tell everyone you're the greatest, you usually not taking anything away. He's one of the best ever at the sport in his weight class, but Anderson Silva didn't ever have to call himself the GOAT. Other people did it for him. George St. Pierre never had to call himself the best 170 ever, or a lot of people call him the GOAT. His fighting did all the talking for him. But when you're self-promoting, you're non-stop, it gets to be too much, especially when you're in your 30s.
Random GSP impersonation. Are you intoxicated? He said to Michael Bisping. Then he kicked his ass, so that was good. Another topic I wanted to go over is kind of fight related because it deals with one of the greatest announcers ever, Joe Rogan. So I've been following his podcast ever since it started, which is basically in his basement, sitting on a couch, kind of like what we're doing here in my basement. Hashtag no homo. Now, slightly homo. So what's going on is Joe Rogan signed one of the most epic deals ever. His YouTube channel and podcast has taken over in the last roughly 10 years to a point where he's got millions upon millions of listeners to every podcast. YouTube is probably paying him up the ass per episode. He's making millions in sponsors and millions and millions. Finally, Spotify cut him a deal for $100 million, which is incredible. Ridiculous. I even heard that, through his friends, it kind of joked around, like 100 million's like for a year. So it could be up to, 400 million. I'm not sure. Either way, in his comments, he was saying that I don't want to be censored anymore from YouTube, and I'll have a platform where I can speak my mind and have guests on that I want to, like people who are controversial, like Alex Jones, motherfuckers, and some other crazy guests that have been kind of blacklisted. So what happened was he signs this deal, everything's looking awesome, transfers over, and then all the episodes get transferred over on Spotify, except for all these guests that are kind of blacklisted. And people are wondering what would happen. And it turns out that a lot of the employees at Spotify are not happy. They're forcing perhaps a strike, and then also, maybe even trying to leave the company if they continue with having uncensored Joe Rogan podcasts.
And it's just the most ridiculous shit you could ever do, because when you're bringing Joe to your company, you know what you're getting. He's never lied about who he is. He's very real. He's open. You can see all of his podcasts. You know the deal. You knew what you were signing. So what made you change your mind after you got him? You thought, well, we're gonna get him and change him. It's like, I don't understand like what the thought process here is. If I'm going into McDonald's, I know I'm eating like shit. I'm not going there and saying, well, you don't have vegan 2-calorie options for me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna drink a bottle of vodka. It better be 40% or more, and I better get cross-eyed while doing it. So, you know what you're getting, and that's what people want. And if you start watering down Joe, editing his stuff, having select guests, it's just going to turn into a shit show. And I wouldn't be surprised if he just nags on the contract. He
says, fuck this, and goes to somewhere else.
He could build his own channel, a la Alex Jones and InfoWars. I'm not a huge fan, but I watch it every night. Just for some crazy news and just seeing what his conspiracy theories are all about. But it's entertainment for me, and stay tuned for some Alex Jones impersonations. I bought a wig, and it's going to happen. I thought I'd take this section to go over technique of the week, and I'm springing this on Grill, but he is a deadlift king, and I wanted to ask him, how do you attack lockout issues? Do you have problems, blasting that? Exactly what I have, actually. Blasting the deadlift off the ground's no problem. Hitting my knees, getting it past, just, it's looking good, and then boom, I'm having trouble locking that bitch out. What do you recommend I do? Even though I probably won't listen to you as usual.
I think there's a couple things you got to look at when you see someone's deadlift and how they're locking out. First off, I got to see, is it just too much weight can just be the problem? Because if there's never been a lockout problem, but then all of a sudden you just have trouble locking it out, it might just be the weight selection, as simple as that. Sometimes it can be your air, which doesn't seem like the case in a lot of people, but it can be as simple as not taking in a big enough breath. I know myself, I've gotten to a lockout before and been ready to pass out because I did not take a big enough air when I wanted to brace. But a lot of the time, the main culprit is your glutes. Your glutes not being able to extend the hips and finish the lift off. And a lot of the time it's very neglected in people's training. You don't really, especially guys more so, you don't really see guys doing pure glute training.
Especially Darrell that can balance a champagne bottle on his booty like Kim Kardashian.
So
OnlyFans page coming soon.
So it's usually the glutes, a big culprit in that. Another thing it might be is just your positioning at the bottom. If you're able to blast weight off the floor, a lot of the time you may just be relying purely on the speed and not technique. So you may have to work on tightening the lats in more and refining your technique so that all that power that's going into the floor is going into the bar. If you're blasting off and it instantly cat backing, but it still moves fast, then you lock out, most likely you're losing a lot of that power. There's a lot of power drop off because you're moving inefficiently. Now, if you do that same thing and maintain form, you're going to be easier with your lockout. So how are you going to know how to identify between the two, if it's your technique or if it's weak glutes? Well, you might as well do both. So I would suggest adding in block pulls, not so much rack pulls because a lot of people are able to do those, but if you do a block pull, maybe 5-inch block pull, you're going to be starting with less leg drive and having to rely on the hamstrings and glutes and erectors to lock that bad boy out more, and at the same time it's going to force you to get into a more a tighter starting position so that you can move more efficiently throughout the deadlift.
Cool. Wow. Awesome advice. So, if you have any more questions, definitely shoot us a message and we'll go over where to contact us after. One technique I'd like to share involving combat sports, and we saw it in the Izzy fight, textbook kickboxing, mostly I would say K1 style, but Izzy's got a funky style, but dropping those low kicks and calf kicks onto the lead leg, what he did to Costas. And what that does is just set up basically your opponent to start worrying about what's going on downstairs to the legs. And then using that eventually to set up a high kick. And, I think that's eventually what led to him getting his noodle rocked. And then ultimately it was the left hook again that dropped him, and he was able to finish him. But I believe that head kick and that head kick setup, and especially, worst case scenario, you just take that leg out.
You have no power.
You have no power on your punches. If anybody's trained here, you know that you need to have your lead leg in order to throw a strong right cross, a left hook, any kind of pivoting movement. And when that leg's taken away from you, almost borderline snapping your ACL sometimes. And I know it's happened where guys have had their legs folded in. It's kind of gross, but I mean, it's a tactic, and you got to learn how to block those low kicks. Just raise your leg up a bit, bend your knee, so you can check some of those, or else it's going to be a quick night for your opponent. But also remember, use those low kicks to set up a high kick or even a switch high kick. Just learning how to do that and take the leg out is a big part of my background in Kyokushin karate, where it's heavy on low kicks and also high kicks. So that's a little technique for this week. If you have any questions, reach out to us at, probably our best way is on Instagram. So Darrell, where can we find you?
You can reach me at my personal Instagram at @dpetties, or you can reach me on my team Instagram at Generation Strength.
Cool, yeah, and I'll have that at the bottom of the screen here for you guys. Also, you can reach out to me at _Canadian_Grizzly. And you can get all my links on my link tree from there. I also run a website, which is our channel here, www.mutekistrong.com. Muteki means invincible. It means no one can beat you. So that's the message I want to put every day when I set my feet on the ground. So keep that in mind. Go check us out, and we'll see you next week. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again this week. And don't forget to eat big,
Train hard,
and always be fight ready. Hush.
2 guys, 1 bench. Muteki Strong Mindset with host Russell Peel. Home Gyms YYC.